26 years ago, I announced on 2020 the birth of Quinn Bradley, the son of my good friend, journalist Sally Quinn, and her husband, Ben Bradley, who was the wonderful executive editor of the Washington Post. So here we are. Quinn was born with enormous health problems. We all worried about him. His parents were told he would never go to school, he would never hold a job, he would end up being institutionalized. But today, against all odds, Quinn Bradley is the author of a really wonderful, touching book. It's called A Different Life, Growing Up, Learning Disabled, and Other Adventures. And he also has his own website for people with learning disabilities. I am so proud of you. I said to you when I see how wonderful he is, and I mean, he makes me cry. I know what you've gone through.
I know. Well, so, you're almost his godmother, Barbara.
So
should have been.
It's not too late. Give us some idea. I mean, you spent most of your infancy in hospital, so you don't remember that. But give us some idea of what you were coping with.
Well, it was so, as you say, I was only an infant, so I don't really remember, but one of my godmothers has a son who has Fragile X, which is a form of mental retardation. He has a very mild case of it, but I can see the struggles that she goes through with him every day, and that gives me a picture of what my mother went with me.
Tell us about it, Sally.
Well, first of all, he had a heart defect, and he then had epilepsy, and he couldn't talk. He just had enormous problems, and then, as you mentioned, he was seriously learning disabled, and we had to put him in a special school when he was 4 years old. And you talked about the soccer game. I took him to his first soccer game, just praying, and he scored a goal for the other team.
At least I scored a goal.
Okay, all right, maybe not soccer is right. But then when we took him to this therapist, and she said, he is going to be institutionalized in 2 months. He is retarded. He will never go to school. He will never have a job. He will never get married, have a relationship, have friends, anything. I was on my knees. Ben had to carry me out of there. I cried for 3 days, and then I got mad. And I said, wait a minute, I'm looking at this magical person, and my mother's gut tells me this isn't true. And I refuse to believe it. And so Ben and I both just kind of put everything we had into making Quinn believe that he was going to make it.
When he was 14, you found about a condition he had that most people didn't know existed, and it changed your thinking and his. Tell us about it.
Well, we discovered he had a condition, a syndrome called velocardiofacial syndrome, which affects the heart and the voice and some sort of facial deformity, although I don't think he doesn't look it. And it's the second most prevalent syndrome in the United States after Down syndrome, in the world after Down syndrome. And we were so relieved to know that all these terrible things that were happening to him, I mean, low immune system and collapsed lung and learning disabilities, there was actually a diagnosis. That was an enormous relief for us, because then I knew every time he had a hangnail, I would call the doctor who discovered this, Schrenson, and say, is this part of the syndrome?
So did this relieve you, knowing that there was a name for it?
It did, because I thought, everything what I was doing was kind of normal, and because I didn't know any difference between what's normal and what I had. And then when I found out, and I just kind of went, oh, that's why I'm acting's so unnormal. But, if you question it, what is normality? There's really no such thing as normality.
And, and Sally, when you got this diagnosis, because, you said that the doctors told you you got a lot of nevers. When you got the diagnosis, how did it just change your life about how you felt about Quinn and what he could and couldn't do?
Yeah, and because I then knew what we were dealing with, rather than all these sort of random things that were happening. And also I was watching him grow up. And I mean, Quinn, when you did start remembering your life, I mean, as you got older, we went through some terrible times of being in school, and you can tell it better than I can, of being bullied and having people feel that you were weird. And
well, that's what led me to write my book, because I went to this school called the Gow School, and up in the middle of nowhere in Buffalo, which, most schools for kids with learning disabilities are in the middle of nowhere somewhere. And I was there, and I saw all these kids teasing these other kids. You know, and I realized the reason why they're doing that is because if other kids see, you know, them teasing other kids, then they'll think, oh, well, you know, he must not have learning disability.
You were so lonely,
yeah, they did it to
so
me.
depressed. Yeah. But things have changed, and you have this book, and you have a website now called Quinn.
Friendsofquinn.com.
For learning disability people.
Yes.
The big question is, so he's grown up. He has a lovely girlfriend sitting in our front row. Yes. And
Harry is not in the book. The book doesn't have as happy an ending as we have today.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you know what? I want to say what you wrote about your mom. You said, my whole life she's been the one who saves me. She had the wings. She had the wings that I didn't, and she basically carried me everywhere I went.
Which is what you're doing now. Okay, go.
I'm sorry. And she's carried you everywhere. So,
yes.
You know, and now you guys, you live in a house next door to your parents, and you have several roommates. Do you ever think about, Quinn, what you're going to do when your archangel is no longer living next door to you?
Well, I'm hoping I'll have a new archangel.
Are you going to let go? I have a problem letting go.
The problem for me has always been letting go. I mean, I've been so overprotective, and I know it, and talk about how you cope. We have had a lot of therapy, and I still do, to try to make sure that I let Quinn have his independence. He's trying to establish his own independence, but Barbara, we were talking about Grey Gardens, this house.
I should tell you that
where you all, I don't know whether you all have seen the movie
Sally
or
and
not.
Ben bought Grey Gardens from the Beale family, if any of you saw it, and restored it.
And the crazy aunt and sister of cousin of Jackie Kennedy's lived there together. And Quinn once said to me, and he wrote in his book, he said his greatest fear in life is that if I don't let go, we're going to end up like Big Edie and Little Edie, living in Grey Gardens.
I have 52 cats in there.
You better get away from Mom.
I know.
You know I'm very proud of you.
I know.
And Sally, and everything that all the therapy, all the training, everything produced this wonderful young man.
Isn't it worth it?
Yes, it was worth it. I just want to tell you, everyone in the audience is getting home Quinn's book. It's called A Different Life Growing Up Disabled and Other Adventures. Thank you for being with us. We will be right back with Susie Welch.